The story of the fight of the century begins not in 1910, but actually 2 years earlier. On December 26, 1908, in Sydney, Australia, Jack Johnson achieved what many thought was impossible. He stepped into the ring against the reigning heavyweight champion, Tommy Burns. For years, Johnson, a black man from Galveston, Texas, had chased the title. But the era's deep-seated racism kept him from getting a shot. Champions simply refused to fight him. But Johnson was persistent and honestly just incredibly skilled. He followed Burns around the world, taunting him in the press, until the champion finally agreed to a match. Johnson didn't just win that day. He dominated Burns with a display of boxing brilliance, becoming the first African-American heavyweight champion of the world. His victory sent shockwaves across the globe, challenging the very foundation of racial hierarchy. Johnson's reign was unlike any other. He was unapologetically himself, in a time when society demanded black men be subservient. He dressed in fine clothes, drove fast cars, and openly dated white women. This refusal to conform infuriated much of white America, which saw his championship as a direct threat to their sense of superiority. The public clamor grew loud and honestly pretty desperate. They needed someone to reclaim the title, to put Johnson back in what they considered his place. The press, led by writers like Jack London, began a public search for a great white hope, a white fighter who could defeat the confident black champion and restore the racial order they held so dear. The call was answered by a man who seemed to be the perfect candidate, Jim Jeffries. Jeffries was a former heavyweight champion himself, a powerful and fearsome fighter who had retired undefeated in 1905. He had sworn he would never return to the ring, content to live a quiet life on his alfalfa farm. But the pressure was immense. Promoters, fans, and the media relentlessly begged him to come back. They framed the potential fight not just as a sporting event, but as a battle for racial pride. Jeffries was cast as the savior who would prove the superiority of the white race. Eventually, he succumbed to the pressure and the promise of a massive payday, announcing his return to fight Jack Johnson. The stage was now set for a confrontation that was about much more than boxing. It was a symbolic clash of ideologies, a focal point for all the racial tensions simmering in early 20th century America. For Johnson, it was a chance to cement his legacy and prove his skill on the world's biggest stage, silencing his critics once and for all. For Jeffries and his supporters, it was a crusade to reclaim a title they felt never should have been held by a black man. The fight was scheduled for July 4th, 1910, in Reno, Nevada, and the world held its breath, waiting for what everyone knew would be an event for the ages. As the fight drew closer, the anticipation reached a fever pitch. The buildup was fueled by a relentless media narrative that painted the contest in stark racial terms. Newspapers across the country portrayed the match as a referendum on the capabilities and intelligence of black people versus white people. Jim Jeffries was consistently described as a force of nature, an unstoppable brawler whose raw power would surely overwhelm Johnson's more refined technique. He was the Great White Hope, a title that carried the weight of an entire race's expectations on his broad shoulders. Promoters and journalists built him up as a heroic figure, returning from his peaceful farm to defend the honor of his people against the arrogant and defiant black champion. In contrast, Jack Johnson was often depicted in a deeply negative light. The press focused on his flamboyant lifestyle and his confident demeanor, which they twisted into arrogance and insolence. They used racist caricatures to mock him, but Johnson remained unfazed. He understood the power of the media and used it to his advantage, always ready with a witty quote or a confident smile for the cameras. He continued to train in public, showing off his speed and skill, all while maintaining an air of cool detachment. He knew he was the better boxer, and he let his confidence radiate, which only further angered those who wished to see him fail. The location of the fight itself became a point of contention. It was originally planned for San Francisco, but moral reformers and politicians, fearing the social unrest a major integrated sporting event might cause, successfully had it banned in California. The promoter, Tex Rickard, had to scramble to find a new venue. He eventually settled on Reno, Nevada, a city that was eager for the publicity and economic boost the massive event would bring. A special outdoor arena was constructed to hold the thousands of spectators who would travel from all over the country to witness the historic showdown. The move only added to the drama, and the sense that this was a truly monumental event. On the day of the fight, July 4th, 1910, the atmosphere in Reno was electric with tension. The crowd was overwhelmingly pro-Jeffries, and the betting odds favored the former champion. Many believed that Jeffries, despite his long layoff from boxing, would be too strong and durable for Johnson. They clung to the hope that he would fulfill his role and restore the heavyweight title to a white fighter. But as Johnson entered the ring, he appeared calm and self-assured, smiling at the hostile crowd. He knew that the fight was about more than just him. It was a moment that would define an era and send a powerful message to the entire world. When the opening bell rang, the crowd roared, expecting Jim Jeffries to charge forward and quickly overpower Jack Johnson. The Great White Hope did try to press the action, hoping to land a devastating punch that would end the fight early. However, Johnson had other plans. From the very beginning, he demonstrated a level of boxing skill that Jeffries simply could not match. He was faster, more agile, and far more defensively sound. Johnson used his superior footwork to stay just out of Jeffries' reach, expertly dodging and blocking the former champion's powerful but slow attacks. While Jeffries lunged, Johnson would calmly clinch, neutralizing his opponent's strength and frustrating him. As the rounds wore on, Johnson's strategy became clear. He wasn't just defending, he was systematically breaking his opponent down, both physically and mentally. He peppered Jeffries with sharp, accurate jabs that began to take a toll, cutting and swelling his face. All the while, Johnson taunted him, smiling and talking to Jeffries in the ring, chipping away at his confidence with every word and every punch. The crowd grew quiet as they watched their hero struggle. The man they believed was invincible was being completely outclassed by the fighter they had been taught to despise. Johnson was in total control, dictating the pace and picking his shots with precision. By the middle rounds, it was evident that Jeffries had no answer for Johnson's masterful performance. He was exhausted from chasing Johnson around the ring and absorbing a steady stream of punishment. His powerful punches rarely landed, and when they did, Johnson took them without flinching. The Boilermaker, as Jeffries was known, had been dismantled piece by piece. Johnson's superior conditioning and tactical brilliance were on full display. He was not just winning the fight. He was giving a masterclass in the art of boxing, proving that intelligence and technique could triumph over brute force. The dream of the Great White Hope was turning into a nightmare before the eyes of thousands. The end came in the 15th round. Johnson, seeing that Jeffries was defenseless and barely able to stand, went on the attack. He unleashed a flurry of powerful punches, sending Jeffries to the canvas for the first time in his entire professional career. The crowd was stunned into silence. Jeffries bravely got back to his feet, only to be knocked down again by another combination from Johnson. He rose once more, but Johnson knocked him down a third time against the ropes. Before the referee could finish the count, Jeffries' corner threw in the towel to save their fighter from further punishment. Jack Johnson had won. He had defended his title and defeated the Great White Hope in a dominant, undeniable victory. Jack Johnson's victory was celebrated with joy and pride in black communities across the United States. For them, it was a moment of immense significance. Johnson had not only proven he was the best fighter in the world, but he had also shattered the myth of white superiority on a global stage. People poured into the streets in cities like Chicago, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., cheering for their champion. His win was a powerful symbol of black strength, intelligence, and resilience in the face of overwhelming prejudice. It was a source of inspiration, a rare and public moment of triumph in an era defined by oppression and segregation. Sadly, these celebrations were met with a wave of horrific violence. The defeat of the Great White Hope unleashed a furious and deadly backlash from whites who could not accept the outcome. Race riots broke out in more than 50 cities across the country. Mobs of angry whites attacked black individuals and neighborhoods, leading to widespread destruction, injuries, and death. The joyous celebrations turned into nights of terror. The aftermath of the fight laid bare the deep and violent racial hatred that permeated American society. Johnson's victory, while a monumental achievement, had also triggered a tragic and brutal response from those who saw it as an unacceptable challenge to the racial hierarchy. The media reaction was equally telling. While some newspapers acknowledged Johnson's superior skill, many others expressed their disappointment and continued to vilify him. The fight had been filmed, with the intention of showing Jeffries' victory in movie theaters nationwide. However, with Johnson as the winner, a moral panic ensued. Fearing that images of a black man dominating a white man would incite more violence and corrupt public morals, city after city moved to ban the film. Eventually, in 1912, the United States Congress passed the Sims Act, a law that specifically banned the interstate transportation of prize fight films. The law was aimed directly at suppressing the visual evidence of Johnson's triumph. Despite the backlash, Jack Johnson's legacy endured. His victory over Jim Jeffries remains one of the most important moments in sports history. It challenged racial stereotypes and forced a national conversation about race, even if the immediate results were violent. Johnson became a symbol of defiance and a forerunner for future black athletes who would break barriers, from Jesse Owens to Jackie Robinson and Muhammad Ali. He paid a heavy price for his courage and his refusal to compromise, but his impact was undeniable. He proved that greatness knew no color, and in doing so, he carved out a permanent and powerful place in the long fight for civil rights.